In every city, there are stories that never made the papers. Not because they weren't important, but because they were inconvenient. They live in forgotten files, in half-finished investigations, in questions no one wanted answered. This isn't where justice always wins. This is where the echoes remain. This is Reverberating Noir. Welcome to Reverberating Noir. There are places in this city that remember what the people forget. Corners where the light doesn't quite reach. Walls that hold the shape of a scream long after the voice is gone. Tonight, we walk the edge of the Hudson, where the water moves slow, where the fog hides more than it reveals.
In 1878, a man named Bohlke Luerssen disappeared from the living world. He was 52 years old, a German immigrant, a maker of syrups and cordials. When he was found, he was not in his bed. He was not in his shop at 101 North Monroe Street. He was in the water, wedged between rocks and a seawall.
They found him near Sibyl's cave. If you know Hoboken, you know the name. It sounds like poetry, like a myth. But in 1878, it was just a gap in the stone, a dark mouth opening onto the river. Cold, wet, unforgiving. Luerssen was floating there, face down, as if the river had tried to keep him, as if it wasn't ready to let go.
The official record calls it a homicide, but records are fragile things. They bend under pressure. They break when there is no one left to defend them. Luerssen had built a life here. He distilled flavors. He crafted sweetness in a city that was turning bitter. Post-Civil War New York was a place of noise, of industry, of men climbing over each other to reach the top. Luerssen was not at the top. He was in the middle. And sometimes, the middle is the most dangerous place to be.
The police looked for a reason. They always look for a reason. It makes the chaos feel manageable. If there is a reason, there is a pattern. If there is a pattern, there is safety. They found a name. John Schuman, a former employee, a man who had worked the vats and the bottles alongside Luerssen, a man who had been fired. The reason given was dishonesty, a small word for a large betrayal.
Dishonesty in business is common. Theft, embezzlement, cutting corners. But it rarely ends in the river, not unless something else was happening. Something beneath the surface. Neighbors reported arguments, heated voices near the distillery. Words thrown like stones. But voices fade. Stones sink. And by the time the police arrived, the only thing left was the silence.
Schuman vanished. Not slowly, not quietly. He boarded a westbound train and ceased to exist. Think about that. In 1878, disappearing was easier than breathing. No digital footprint, no cameras. Just a ticket and a direction. West, away from the water, away from the cave, away from the body. The police wanted to charge him. They suspected him. But suspicion is not evidence. And without evidence, the law is just a story we tell ourselves.
The Hudson County Coroner's Report from 1878 is brief. It notes the decomposition. It notes the submersion. It rules out accident. But it cannot rule in a killer. There was no weapon, no witness, no confession. Just a body and a missing man. This is the architecture of an unsolved case. It is built on gaps, on the space between what we know and what we feel, and those gaps are where the dread lives.
Imagine standing on that seawall, the wind coming off the Jersey side, the smell of brine and coal smoke. You look down at the rocks. You see the shape of a man caught in the tide. You know someone put him there. You know why they might have done it, but you cannot prove it. So you write a report, you file it away, and the city moves on. The distillery at 101 North Monroe Street likely closed. The syrups stopped flowing. The bottles went dark. And Luerssen became a footnote.
There was a rumor in 1882, 4 years later. A tipster claimed Schuman had confessed to a minister in Chicago. A confession without a witness. A voice in a confessional booth. Gone as soon as it was spoken. The Chicago Daily News printed it, but nothing came of it. No arrest, no trial, just another ripple in the water. Why does this matter? Because it shows how easily justice dissolves. How easily a life is reduced to a rumor.
We like to think the past is settled, that the books are closed, that the dead are at rest. But cases like this, they stay open, they hang in the air, like the fog over the Hudson. Thick, persistent, refusing to lift. Luerssen was an immigrant. He was a worker, he was a victim, and in the eyes of the system, he was expendable. If he had been wealthy, would they have searched harder? If Schuman had been caught on the platform, would the trial have happened? We don't know. We only know the silence.
The psychological weight of an unsolved crime is not just on the family, it is on the community. It tells everyone else that the rules are optional, that safety is an illusion, that you can be taken from your shop, from your street, from your life, and no one will be held accountable. Schuman was never tried, but he was never cleared. He exists in a state of permanent suspicion, a ghost in the machine. And Luerssen exists in a state of permanent waiting for a justice that never comes.
Sibyl's cave is gone now. The Stevens estate was redeveloped. The rocks were smoothed over. The waterfront is lined with condos and bike paths. But the water is the same. It still moves slow. It still hides things. And if you stand there late at night, when the city noise dies down, you might hear it. The echo of a dispute. The splash of a body. The silence of a train pulling away.
Most people miss the systemic failure here. They focus on the killer. They focus on the victim. But the real horror is the machinery that allowed this to happen. The police department with limited resources. The coroner with no forensic tools. The newspapers that sold the tragedy but didn't solve it. It was a perfect storm of indifference. And indifference is colder than the river.
So we tell the story. Not to solve it. We cannot solve it now. The evidence is dust. The witnesses are long gone. We tell it to keep the memory alive, to acknowledge that Bohlke Luerssen was here, that he worked, that he died, and that his death matters, even if no one was punished for it. In the noir tradition, justice is not guaranteed. Sometimes the only victory is remembering.
There is a pattern in these old cases. The vanishing suspect, the convenient lack of evidence, the body found in a liminal space between the land and the water, between the known and the unknown. It suggests planning. It suggests knowledge. Schuman knew the cave. Schuman knew the tides. Schuman knew how to disappear. That is the unsettling part. Not that a crime happened, but that it was executed so perfectly.
We live in a world of noise now. Alerts. Notifications, constant connection. But the darkness hasn't changed. People still vanish. Trust is still broken, and the water still keeps its secrets. Luerssen's story is a mirror. It shows us what happens when the light goes out, when the system blinks, when the silence wins.
If you look closely at the archives, you see the gaps. Pages missing, ink faded, names crossed out. History is not a solid line. It is a series of fractures. And Luerssen falls into one of those fractures. He is suspended there, between 1878 and today, waiting for someone to look down into the water and see him.
Thank you for listening to Reverberating Noir. If these stories resonate with you, if you feel the weight of the unsolved, please subscribe. Join us in the shadows. Help us keep the light on. We will be here, waiting, listening, remembering.
John Schuman was never found, but the river is still there, and it remembers everything.
The recording ends here, but the case doesn't. Somewhere, the evidence still exists. The questions still wait. If this story stayed with you, if it followed you into the silence, subscribe to Reverberating Noir. Not for us, for the stories that refuse to disappear.
Because as long as something doesn't make sense, the truth is still out there. And someone will find it.
Until next time, keep listening to the dark.